So we can start whenever.
The big hand is on the 2 and the little hand is on, no, the big hand is on the 12 and the little hand is on the 2. And I can now tell time analog again. And it's time to start the meeting. This is Openpgp. If you meant to be in HTTP BIS, it's next door. If you wanted to be somewhere else, check the agenda.
So, first off, just to note that Barry has stepped up as co-chair, which is much appreciated. So Christopher Lilienstolp is stepped down as co-chair. So just making sure that everybody knows that. This is the note well. If you haven't been to an IETF meeting before, you should probably read this note well and note it well. This covers the intellectual property stuff that comes up in the meeting, among others. We have an hour and a half today. The basic agenda is to just make sure everyone knows what that we're on the same page. Ensure that we're going to basically talk a little bit about the registry issues because we have a couple of requests for code points on registries. And then Werner's going to present a series of specific changes for 4880 BIS. We'll talk a little bit about the PGP MIME, S-MIME stuff that came up on the mailing list and any other business. Blue sheet singular should be going around. If you haven't gotten it yet, raise your hand. Anybody have anything else that they want to raise for the agenda? I don't see anything. So, all right. So just a brief overview of the documents to make sure that people are aware of them. So we have formally adopted what was Werner's original draft and is now a working group draft for RFC 4880 BIS. So this basically is the original RFC 4880 with some integration of the elliptic curve stuff, and a few minor changes are underway. So we're going to do more than minor changes here going out to fulfill the charter. Discussion happens on the mailing list, and the draft is currently written. Yeah, you can bring it up front. Thanks. Draft is currently written in Markdown. If you want to actually propose changes, we welcome concrete proposals. You might find it easiest to do a diff from the Markdown, or you can just send the words to the mailing list. Please use, there's a Git repo here that you can use if you want to pull the draft. But discussion should happen on the mailing list. So you're welcome to do a pull request, but make sure then that you make a copy of that to the mailing list so that we can have the discussion all in one place and archived by the IETF. So just making sure that everybody's aware of those sort of guidelines for contribution. So, so one of the issues that we've dealt with on the mailing list recently is that we're going to get some requests for code points that may not be the things that we think are mandatory to implement or even necessarily advisable. And we have a very limited code point space because of the way the registries have been designed in RFC 4880. So I wanted to raise this point and just put forward a concrete proposal. We don't have a specific diff for this at the moment, but just a concrete proposal for one approach that could be used, and I'd like to hear feedback on the proposal. So the registries right now are mostly 1-octet registries where the high bit is expected to be low. That is, they're basically 7-bit registries. And so one approach, the proposed approach is to loosen up our control of the registries in a similar way to the way that TLS is loosening up their control over the registries to allow code point assignment, but not working group endorsement, so that people can get a code point. To do that, we would need a larger registry probably than a 7-bit registry. And because all of our existing registries are basically 7-bit, we can use a high bit to indicate that actually it's a 2-octet value in the registry, and then we get a 14-bit registry instead of a 7-bit registry. It's sort of a UTF-8-ish approach. but it would give us enough space that we could do a first come, first served and not have to argue on the mailing list about whether we get code point assignment or not. So the approach that the TLS working group is doing is that the registries basically are first come, first served with an expert review to ensure that the documents that the proposed assignment is actually legible, but no direct endorsement by the working group unless they want a Y in the working group Y column. And so this way, if someone wants to work on an extension, they can just they can pick a code point, document what they're doing, and get the code point without us having to have a discussion on the mailing list about it. Is this proposal clear? Do people have questions about what the results of that would be? Phil, you look like you want to say something about it.
Yeah, I'm not keen on it.
Okay.
The reason that TLS had to go their way.
That's Phil Holland-Baker.
Yeah. So the reason TLS had to go that way is that they made the mistake of using suites. And that means that they don't have so much flexibility. I would rather have a divide between stuff the IETF cares about and everything else. I would like everything else to be as far away from IETF and IANA as possible. So rather than changing the registry in this way, what I would suggest is have one additional code point, which would be, the algorithm is specified by an OID. And then stick the OID in some part of the packet or whatever that you don't care about. And the reason that you do that is that then, since anybody can get an OID, anybody can have I have an ARC. Komodo has an ARC as well. I mean, in fact, I have more than one ARC. That puts the tagging of the crypto completely outside the IETF process and means that people can't come around and say, oh, my algorithm has been blessed by the IETF. And you know, and I know that we can say that we're not implying endorsement, but you know and I know that every time we've done that in the past, the people who get the code points then immediately go out and their marketing department say, this is IETF endorsed, that we've got a code point. So that's a way that you completely isolate all the vanity crypto from the stuff we care about. And also, if we ever get to the point where we've used up all 126 remaining code points, well, we've got a natural expansion thing. And you know what? I don't think people are going to care about how long OIDs are or whatever, or interpreting them by the time that you run out of 126 slots.
Okay, so there's a counter proposal there. Does anyone else want to speak to the proposal or the counter or Phil's counter proposal?
I'll strengthen that discussion, please, on Phil's proposal. Okay then.
Stephen Farrell, just as a random participant, I'm not convinced that Phil's argument that would work so well, because I think marketing departments can make any claim they want and they will. The working group could do it that way. I guess it would probably work. The TLS copying the TLS approach seems like a better understood thing. Unless you're convinced that Phil's argument's correct, no. I'm personally not.
I have a question about Phil's proposal. Do you, these other ones that go into OIDs would not be reviewed at all? It's just anybody wants to do anything.
I'm relaying a comment from Sean Turner. He says, we've done this a bunch of times. IPsec and TLS are two examples.
Banner?
Werner, we already use object identifiers for the specifying the curves. So anyone can put any curve out and say it is an IETF endorsed curve. So I don't think that argument is really sound.
Paul Wouters. So yes, we have done this in IPsec, where we can now use an OID to decide what algorithm to use. But that is a live happening, right? I'm talking to remote serve, and I immediately going to decide whether or not I'm going to find that algorithm acceptable or not, With PGP, it's a little different. If I need to sign something or encrypt something, and then hours later somebody else decides, well, actually I really don't like that algorithm, then
Or years later.
then you have a different problem. So I'm not sure if the mapping between TLS and IPsec really maps onto this Openpgp problem.
Philhan Baker again. Well, part of the idea here is that it avoids the need to have yet another registry. And so when you're writing the code, because virtually every crypto library already has a mechanism for, here's an OID, give me the algorithm that maps to that OID, or I'm using an algorithm, tell me the OID of that algorithm. If you create another registry, then that's another set layer that I have to put in my code. Now, obviously, if somebody wants this stuff to actually be interoperable, then they're going to have to write a draft as minimum. However, my view is that if somebody wants this to actually interoperate, they had better be using something that is in the mandatory to implement or the very strongly recommended by IETF route, or else it's not going to work anyway.
So to be clear, the original proposal did not indicate any creation of any new registries. It indicates that we should have columns in the registry indicating working group approval and mandatory to implement, and it increases the size of the registry so that we are able to do first come, first serve without depletion. But none of the proposals on the table thus far have indicated the creation of a new registry.
Well, yeah, but what it means is that somebody who's coming to the IETF is with an algorithm they're trying to propose is going to have 4 points of contact that they're trying to get through with different rules or whatever, and I'm trying to reduce that to 0 so that we don't need to talk to them.
All right. So I'm going to post this proposal to the mailing list in hopes that we can get people to speak up in favor of one or the other of these proposals, and maybe try to achieve some sort of consensus there.
Another comment from Sean. He said, I should have been clearer. The registries are now IETF consensus. We've had examples of IPsec and TLS that went less strict. We should follow these examples.
Okay, so the less strict from TLS is this outline here. This is in the slides. I'm not going to go over it in full here, but basically everyone who comes to the IETF without needing to get working group approval in this proposal would get sort of first come, first serve, get a code point assigned. And they could do that through the for all others section.
Just to be clear, that what I read here is designated expert review,
yeah,
not first come, first serve.
Okay, thanks. Yeah. So that would ensure that the draft is basically legible, and we would need to choose a designated expert if we wanted that to happen. Anyway, this will go to the mailing list, and I hope that people will give feedback on the mailing list and speak up. We can maybe call for some consensus there. So Werner, do you want to step up? Yeah, so the pink box there, if you stand in the pink box, then they'll be able to get you on video.
Okay, so I have a couple of topics. So the first topic is the mine flag. I suggested that last week or two weeks ago. The thing is simply that it would be very convenient to have an indication in whether the content is a mine part or it's not a mine part. That makes writing parts much easier, because if you notice the mine part, you can just put it with a mine part. And another advantage of this flag is
Werner, closer to the microphone, please. You can move.
Turn the microphone so that you're more comfortable facing where you want to face. There you go.
Okay. The other advantage is that mine already has all the features to describe metadata of the content. So we have some different data packages we already have, file and things, but in most cases you can't use it for different reasons anyway. That mine is much more flexible for this, and but it's just easy extension of the data packet. It has been suggested a couple of years ago already.
So,
You're still not good on the mic. Get it really close. No, it's on. It's just too far from your mouth. No, now it's not.
All right, let's swap mics for the moment.
I take this way. So let's see. Okay, that was the MIME flag. We have it in the issue tracker, and there's a proposal on the mailing list, and well, that's it. And okay, this other thing is David has suggested to put explicit words into the RFC to make it clear that part of the metadata, which is in the literal data packet, is not covered by the signature. But we have another topic on this later in a later slide.
So Werner, are you okay if people come to the mic if they have questions? We can go through your points.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So I'm not seeing anyone at the mic. So
anyone questions? No? Okay. The other thing is that's also pretty easy. We have in signature packets, in the signature, we have the long key ID, so 64-bit key ID, to find the key for verification. But 64-bit key IDs are too short to really find the keys because we can easily create creations on the 64 bits. That's a bit annoying and actually dangerous if you always get bad signature due to your wrong key. There is a proposal that we put the fingerprint into a new signature subkey, subpacket, and very similar to the issuer packet with the 64-bit key ID. And this would fix our problems. There's a proposal there on the mailing list and also in the issue tracker. And I hope that with new key format later we can fade out the use of the issuer subpacket, which needs to stay currently in Openpgp data for backward compatibility. But it's no problem for implementations if a new issuer fingerprint subpacket will be added to the data. That just works, and implementations can use it or cannot use it. So whatever. Questions? Okay, fine. Yeah, we recently talked about a thing which would be nice to have. It is another encryption subpacket called encrypted2, which is used to put the recipient keys. So if you sign and encrypt, then you can put the recipients to whom you encrypted into the signature. So after the encryption layer has been stripped off, there's still the signature, and everyone can see or can check to whom it was originally encrypted. There's no proposal for this yet. It should be easy to do something, and I would like that. I would appreciate if someone writes a proposal for this, how to have a subpacket which carries the recipient keys for the encryption layer. Then
I have a question as a participant. What is the value of I see the value of having the recipient email addresses or something. What's the value of having the key that you had used?
The value is that you can later prove or show that it has been encrypted to this and this, and because a kind of attack is that you take it, strip off the encryption and encrypt it to someone else. Anyone can do this, and just the signature claims something different.
So you're saying okay. So you're saying if you have the original encrypted version and the decrypted version, you can re-encrypt to check that nothing has changed.
Yes. Yeah. Well,
the signature should be.
Yeah. Well, really I sent you a signed and encrypted mail.
Yeah.
And you decrypt it, but keep the signature layer for me, and then you send it encrypted to someone else. Well, let's say to the NSA or so, or no, it's to a newspaper. But then they can detect, okay, it has originally been encrypted for you, and so it was legitimate that you are sent it forward.
Again, I see the value of saying who it was encrypted for, but I don't see the value of having the original encryption key once you've decrypted it.
No. I just meant so that's a matter of the proposal. For example, putting the fingerprint into it, and then if you have the fingerprint, you can figure out to whom it was encrypted. Yeah, sorry, a misunderstanding. So for this, we would need a proposal.
So I want to ask if there's anyone in the room who would be interested in writing up this proposal. This is a pretty straightforward thing, and it would be great to have a concrete contribution. Anybody interested? I'm not seeing any volunteers. Okay, so this probably won't happen unless someone does it.
But there are more folks on the mailing list.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
So the note taker, please note that we need to look on the mailing list for volunteers for this.
Okay, S2K, our KDF function, it has already been discussed a couple of months ago. So what we want to have is a code point for argon2i and another code point for no S2K at all. We don't have this right now. This is useful if you already have a key with high entropy. So for example, stored in a database and you want to send this out. So this wouldn't involve all this KDF, the iteration and the time consuming stuff. And for some applications, this is very useful. So this, so the proposal is to have 2 new code points for these things. And we should deprecate all other S2K modes, which means also the iterated and sorted, which is the de facto standard today, in favor of argon2i for the transfer of secret key material. And the last point is keep unprotected keys is somewhat related to this. Of course, it should still be possible to have non-encrypted keys. The S2Ks are used to are encrypt keys or protect secret keys, and also for the symmetric encrypted integrity packet data. Yeah. If you just encrypt with a symmetric key with a passphrase. Yes, I guess there are questions or comments.
Hi, Stephen Farrell. So for argon2i, there's some discussion in CFRG about the draft about that, and I forget the status of it there, but I hope that what's being done here and what's being done there will be the same. That's the intent, yeah?
Yes, so as far as I remember, we need to figure out or define which parameters are to be used then for this. So
yes. Okay, so I just want to check, we're not in danger of kind of implementations here getting ahead of the documentation of the algorithm in CFRG?
Okay, no.
Good, okay, thank you.
Hanno Böck, I had basically the same question. I want to clarify that. Do we want to wait till CFRG has produced an RFC for Argon 2? Or, because as far as I remember, but I don't recall it exactly, there was a paper with attacks on Argon 2i, and there were some debates whether the algorithm should be changed to counter that attack. So it may be that something else ends up as being the standardized Argon 2 than what's out there now.
So my impression of what happened there is that Argon 2i has actually been modified, but I could also be wrong about this. Is there any CFRG person here who knows more? I can ask for clarification in the CFRG meeting later.
Like the point would be, do we say this will be delayed until CFRG has finalized something on Argon 2, or is this to be implemented pretty soon?
I mean, I want to encourage implementations to happen. I guess one thing we could do is we could say we're going to put a code point in place for Argon 2
Yes, I mean, I don't know if the changes that have been considered in Argon 2i are effect interop, or if they're just parameters that you can tweak anyway. So I think, yeah, talking to the CFRG folks is a fine thing to do. But you can also sort of say to them, we want an Argon 2i or an Argon 2 RFC. Please don't sit on this for years. And we don't want you to, if let's say they get to draft 10 or something, you could say, we're going ahead with draft 10. Please don't do non-interoperable changes anymore. So okay. If you talk to them, I mean, it should be a solvable problem.
Okay. So we have a lot of algorithms in Openpgp, and here's a suggestion on what to deprecate. I think the triple DES is interesting because it's the only must algorithm in Openpgp currently, but that's old. That's nearly 20 years old that we have it in Openpgp, and this should be and is in reality it has been replaced by IES. So there are the implementations which don't even implement triple DES. So I think it's pretty okay to remove triple DES. MD5, it's obvious. SHA-1, we also need to deprecate this for obvious reason because of the IETF and because we want to use it in a few years still. I also suggested to remove SHA-2 to 4 because it doesn't really fit there. Why do we need four algorithms and implement them? So it doesn't make much sense to have this one. The other is RIPE-MD 160. It's not really used. And, there is 2fish, which is actually a good cipher later, and 128-bit block length. It would be okay, but why should we use 2fish? There is no sound reason for this. It's slower than other things. We need a lot of code to implement this, and so it doesn't make sense. Blowfish, for obvious reason, it's too old. We should also deprecate the old symmetric encrypted data packet. This is the data packet without the MDC, so without our own modification detection code. This can be deprecated because the modification detection code is now in use everywhere. And we should also deprecate all version 3 keys because they are based on MD5 and they have a couple of other problems. And so these are basically the PGP2 keys. S2K already talked about this. And the last question is whether we should deprecate certain key sizes. For example, RSA keys below whatever or above 16K or what. So I think that is some stuff that we can discuss about this because it's people expect that implementations also work with 16K RSA keys. Whether this makes really sense, I don't know. And so this is a thing where stuff may break. It might also be useful to think about whether we allow arbitrary length for RSA keys, because some implementations can't handle arbitrary length. So this is nothing we probably can discuss right now here, but this is stuff for the mailing list to discuss this point, the last point. Anyone wants to keep one of the old algorithms? No. Huh? Okay. The strategy, a suggestion for the strategy is that we have classes of deprecated algorithms and parameter values. So there will be a must not implement, which is definitely MD5. And the other thing is that we need to have some compatibility for, we need to be able to decrypt all data. So the suggestion is to use must not produce, but may consume data, for example, with triple DES, because there is existing data for that, but it should not produce this. And it should or may issue a warning to the user if it is possible, or if something alt is decrypted with an alt algorithm. And the other thing is that the alt MDC packet or the SEIPD may be implemented.
I was thinking about on the previous slide. Is there anything else we could get rid of? Like what are you leaving behind? I mean, it includes like Camellia. Is that widely used or?
Well, I don't know whether Camellia is widely used, but it's only there for political reasons. So that's my idea of it. So it's an okay cipher. It's okay cipher. It is a kind. You could view it as a fallback thing, and I don't really care about this Camellia. So
yeah, but I guess more generally, I mean, maybe when this is brought to the list, maybe also include the ones that you're leaving behind, so that people, if they wanted to offer that, could have that choice. Yeah.
So if we had a clearer view of what deprecation means in terms of the registry, I think it would be useful to say, just to be able to concretely say, sure, here, we think these are the columns that we want to put in the registry, and we think that these are the values for those columns for these algorithms, right? So that we have something concrete to say. Because I think that the kind of deprecation we're talking about for triple DES here is maybe for MD5 is maybe different from the kind of deprecation we're talking about for triple DES, right? So like the must not produce but may consume.
We throw it out that we sort of have a difference between deprecated and obsolete. So here we're saying MD5 is obsolete and others are deprecated, which means we don't recommend using them anymore, but they're still around.
So maybe your IANA registry proposal needs a slightly different set of columns from TLS because you have the historical stuff to deal with.
Ready for the next? Okay, here's here two profiles we came up with. So the first one is called the strong proposal. What to do? What are mandatory to implement algorithms? The strong proposal includes AEID, cipher mode. It has not yet specified. We don't know which one this will be, but it will be a must then. Second is AS256 and SHA-512. And the other thing is the new ED25519 curve for signatures. We missed something. We don't have anything for encryption now, of course. So the 25519, or what's it called, extra 25519, which is the logical extension for this for encryption here. This is the one proposal. On the other is the more compatible proposal, which also includes AEID and but the lower key sizes for AES and for SHA, but also RSA. That RSA is the mandatory to implement algorithm. So these are proposals.
Werner, can you clarify if the proposal is to have both of these, or if we need to choose one?
Yeah, I think we should choose one. So because they are mandatory to implement, and I don't think it makes much sense to require implementations to implement both of them. So there are certain reasons why, for example, SHA-512 is a good candidate, even if it is slower on embedded machines, because you need to use this for ED25519 anyway. Well, yes, that's a strong proposal, but if you want to have more compatible with existing implementations, you could use the other thing, but it will only work with the last three items then, because the AID is not in any current implementation because it's not specified. So So that's just why.
So any discussion about whether the MTI profile should be forward-looking or compatible?
My name is Marko Zahowski, CSG. I was wanting to ask if there's any thought being given to the use of quantum safe algorithms for Openpgp. Algorithms for protecting against quantum computing threat.
No, not yet. So we don't have any algorithm. But this is also a thing with the code, with the registry that for Exponent this can be used then, and well, later kept on using them instead of using experimental code points for this. But I think it's too early to put this in the standard.
Sure.
So it's Stephen Farrell. So the CFRG are also beginning to look at quantum resistant algorithms and so on. So I totally agree with your last statement that it would be premature to try and pick any such thing and put it into a standard.
Phil Baker. Yeah, we don't have a thing yet, but I could easily see us burning 50 or 100 code points while we're trying to get to an algorithm. So we better get that registry thing through now, or else we're going to regret it.
Hanno Böck, with the post-quantum thing, if we look at the symmetric part of this, if we choose the strong proposal, we basically have that already covered, because as soon as you go to a 256-bit security, you have reasonably post-quantum security. So if we want to be forward-looking for post-quantum security, we could say, if we choose the strong proposal that's there on the slide, then we're already like halfway done, and only the asymmetric part then has to be done. Then like we could say we can keep the upper 3 points even for the post-quantum future.
So is that was a statement in support of the strong proposal?
Yeah.
So just a kind of a question for information. Say if the working group chooses the strong proposal, how many people won't implement the compatibility stuff anyway? I mean, do we have a sense, or do we think there will be implementations that would only do the strong MTI stuff and would never do what's on RSA and so on?
Well, I can only guess that some JavaScript implementations would only use one of the profiles. But I don't know.
Right. It seems likely to me that new implementations that are looking for what they'll receive would accept older stuff to be compatible. But the issue is what happens when they generate things. They're going to generate stuff that older clients can't decrypt because they're using newer algorithms. So, yeah.
But if we say that the mandatory to implement stuff is the compat stuff, then there's no guarantee we can ever move to the new suites because no one will ever done it.
Exactly.
And it's also not quite okay because of the AID. If we say it is a must, and we don't have it yet, so it is not a problem to use the other algorithms too. So the implementations must be changed anyway.
So my personal opinion would be just to go with whatever people writing code prefer. So I'd be okay if you guys just decided to just let the kind of coders in this game kind of rule this one.
Okay. We have a concrete proposal to send to the mailing list.
Okay, the other thing is the fingerprint. The fingerprint is currently based on SHA-1 hashes, and this needs to be replaced. That is the second point, the transformation, what hash algorithm to use or how to construct the fingerprint. And the other thing is whether to include the creation time of the key into the fingerprint. This has been discussed on the mailing list several times on long threads, whether it's a good idea or whether it's not a good idea. Another point is that, well, that's more kind of a remark that we can expect that keys are larger than 64K for post-quantum. And currently, we for the fingerprint we hash only a 2-byte length of the key. So this should in any case be extended to 4 bytes, so that we have something clear and don't need to truncate something. Okay, so the proposal here is that we don't put the creation time into it, that we use SHA-512, but truncate it to 200 bits.
So we had a lot of back and forth and bike shedding on the mailing list about this fingerprint format, and it never seemed to reach any sort of conclusion. So I'm not sure how we move forward in terms of actually going with something, except that we know that we want to move past the existing implementation. So I don't know, anything that can get us towards a consensus would be great in my book, but I'm not sure what the right way to do that is. I mean, what happens, Stephen? I'll ask you as the AD. What would happen if there is no, like, if there's 4 competing proposals for fingerprints and no one can agree on them? I mean, I think we have decided that we want there to be exactly one format for a fingerprint.
Key version.
Per key version, yeah.
Phil Baker here. Well, one way that you can resolve this sort of thing is to add more requirements until you to knock out candidates that don't work. So if you have 3 people who are saying, well, I want it to be like this because, well, I just like it that way. And then you have another person who's saying, well, I want it to be like this because I would like the same fingerprint format for SSH and PGP and SMIME and everything else that we want to do. Then I think that one should win, because that's my proposal.
Well, except that SSH and SMIME already don't have the same fingerprints, so we can't fix those things in Openpgp working group.
No, but you can have a format that has a content that's as part of the hash, has an identifier that's hashed into the identifier, like we do with, and that's my UDF proposal, has that in, so that then different applications can use fingerprints and you're not going to get an ambiguity between them. So I actually have a concrete rationale for my design choices. It's not I prefer blue or I prefer red. It's I think that the minibus should be white with a red cross on it because it's actually an ambulance.
So you propose?
No, I didn't. No, go ahead.
No, so your proposal is that to explicitly hash some more stuff with the key, but only hash this and not put anything else into the key packet for this. So implicitly we do this. So the fingerprints created for Openpgp are different for fingerprints for any other protocol because the metadata what we hash are anyway different. Yeah. But you just want to have the string Openpgp hashed with it. I can't exactly remember the UDF. Okay, whatever. So it's just hash another string. So we already hash a couple of things with the key. So, well, I have no problem with this. That's the rationale for using SHA-512 is that we need it for ED25519 anyway, so the implementation. And yes, it is slower on embedded machines, and Peter Goodman doesn't like it for this reason. But, well, modern machines is actually faster. So it's for a small implementation, it's probably easier to use SHA-512 and truncate it to a reasonable size. It's only about the wire format from the fingerprint and not about the human representation.
Phil, you stuck your thumb up at one of that. Does that mean you agree with his rationale?
Totally agree on having 512-bit SHA. There are a few other things that I've done to make sure that if you ever need to rev the fingerprint, you've got a way of revving that without expanding so that if you use SHA-3, you can also use those fingerprints as an alternative, so you've got an upgrade path if you ever choose to need them. As far as I'm concerned, though, if Openpgp was to say, well, your fingerprint must be SHA-2 512, that'd be fine with me. I just like backup algorithms. But I like to have exactly 2 algorithms for everything. I like to have one that I'm going to use and one that I might have as a backup. I do not like having 3.
So I think in IETF 95, there was a rough consensus in the room that we wanted there to be exactly 1 fingerprint per key. So if you have a V5 key, that there should be 1 fingerprint for it. So that if I give you a fingerprint and you decide to compute the fingerprint, you're guaranteed to end up with the same thing.
Yeah.
So having 2 fingerprints for a single key seems to violate that decision.
It will be entirely, if you want to have that, absolutely you can do that. Yeah. What I've been doing is trying to work out a profile that will allow me to use the same fingerprint method to identify roots of trust in different formats and use the same fingerprint format and have it be unambiguous. If Openpgp wants to say, okay, we're only going to allow the 512, the SHA-2 version, that's fine with me. Other people might have a requirement for something else. I'm just trying to future-proof the format so that if it needs to change in the future, I mean, the thing is that at some point, it is possible that SHA-2 may be deprecated, and then you've got a question of how do you distinguish between the old fingerprints and the new. Right now, nothing that I'm doing is using the SHA-3 version because there isn't even code that does SHA-3 for most of the
So that would be a Openpgp v6.
Exactly.
We're not specifying Openpgp v6 right now.
You're not specifying it right now, but you probably need to be able to say that you've got an upgrade path to v6 in the future.
Well, if there's a problem with SHA-2, you also need to generate new keys. So it's not a problem to change the key version then.
Well, yeah, but you'd still need to be able to distinguish between the old and the new. I mean, we can take that offline. I mean, if people want to do the versioning issue differently, that's fine.
And if you have specific text you want to propose on this,
I do have a draft.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Good. So post that.
So yeah, Phil has a draft, but I guess what you're looking for more is a pull request, though, right?
Text for 4880 bis.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I presume, Phil, you're writing a draft that has your generic thing in it,
an
and
ID,
not the specific piece of text that's needed here.
I thought he meant draft text.
Yeah. Or was that what you meant?
Well, I can give you draft text. The draft is already in Markdown, so you can have draft text. Yeah.
Well, I would prefer to get it in as a div to the current version.
Okay, I can try and work out how to do that.
So, I guess if you're asking the question, DKG, about how to decide, I mean, I guess one way might be to say, just pick a date and say the only options are those that have pull requests or whatever you prefer by that date, and then just run a straw poll and see what people prefer.
Okay.
And in the end, there are a couple of RFCs that offer suggestions on how to reach consensus and make alternative decisions.
Yeah, there's actually another Mike comment. So relaying Derek, which I think is Derek Atkins, he says, I believe that the creation time and expiration time should be included in the fingerprint computation in order to prevent an attacker from taking my public key and creating a new certificate around it and causing confusion. Granted, an attacker could copy the 2 times as well, but then they cannot modify the expiration time and maintain the fingerprint. So as a participant, I will comment on this, that currently the expiration time is not actually included in the fingerprint. There is an expiration time, but that's not the one that anyone uses as far as I can tell. And they can take a given key. If someone has your secret key, they can reuse it in other places. So I'm not, Derek, I'm not entirely sure that that is a change from the existing situation. And I haven't heard of anyone doing that kind of attack.
We don't have an expiration time in the key. It's in the self-signature. And it is an old proposal to put it back into the expiration time back into the key packet, because this was the case in PGP2. But the original, before Derek, the guy who proposed it, meanwhile has no interest in this. So, well, we discussed it.
So Derek, if you have specific text that you want to provide along with an argument for it, if you could send that to the mailing list, that would be good. But I'm not seeing much discussion on it here right now. So moving on.
So we have this MDC thing, modification detection code, and this is supported by a flag in a special features subpacket, which has only the flag support MDC, which is basically a preference that implementations understand MDC and to advise other implementations to use the MDC feature. For the forthcoming AEID thing, we would add another flag, support AEID, very similar to MDC, but also for version 5 keys. So with the new fingerprints, these new keys, we would say must not use feature packets, because they should also always use AEID then, because these are new keys, and for new keys you need new implementations, and the new implementations can use the modern thing, AEID. And then we can get rid of the feature subpacket, which is, well, you can do this very same with notations or notation signature subpackets. So I don't see a reason to have this feature packet creep there. So with version 5 keys, we could just drop this feature subpacket.
So I see no comments on dropping the feature subpacket, so I think that's just a pull request away.
Oh yeah, so authenticated encryption with additional data. There is a proposal using AES in GCM mode, and there's a concrete proposal for this. The other is to use OCB. OCB seems to have a problem with patents for some people, so we don't know. So it's what we are pretty sure that we can get an exception for this, similar to what Ruggerware gave for TLS. There is also the option to allow both of them, to have a flag which is supported, to have 2 versions. And the other question is whether it needs to be streamable. So that's, or what is called an online algorithm, that it can use as streamable. There are also some newer developments. So POET AZ on LMD. So I myself don't know them exactly. So that's all open for discussion now, or for a long time. What to use? So my personal preference is, of course, OCP, because it's the fastest, it's the cleanest algorithm. But there seem to be some pattern problems, or I don't know. So whether there are really problems. That's an IETF. topics. So what to do with this? Yes.
So I'm not seeing anyone speaking up around the particular any of the particular concerns here. So is the GCM proposal like in a pull request form, something that could be merged?
I can't remember. I only know that Tancred implemented this in Openpgp.js.
So we have one implementation.
Yeah, I heard that. I've not really seen that, but it's somewhere free software thing.
Okay. So this seems like maybe one of the biggest outstanding questions that we have.
Okay. I already mentioned this. There's a problem in the little data packet, which is a long-standing problem. We have the file name in the little data packet and the file creation time, but you can't use it because it's not protected by the signature. It's of course protected by the encryption layer, but you can just modify these flags. Also the file tag, whether it's a binary or whether it's the proposed new MIME thing or text and a Unicode. That's not a good decision. So the idea is to have to define a new signature class. Signature class are the things we have: a signature class 0, which is binary data; signature class 1, which is text from the data, which does the hashing a little bit different. It's complicated thing like canonicalization of line endings and trailing white space removal and the things. And the idea is to define a new signature class, which just hashes everything in the little data packet. And by this, we would basically very easy get a protection for the file metadata, also for this file tag thing. And we could also protect the packet header, so the lang of the little data, so it would explicitly be protected. That's an idea, so we are looking for a proposal for this. If you think this is useful, well, I think if there is information and it is covered by the signature and some of the information is not covered by the signature, that's very hard to explain to people. It's very similar to the non-encrypted subject in mails or in the ARMOR header, that the ARMOR header lines, which give you some information, are just not protected. So they are hints, but some people use it for strange things. And well, it would be an easy way to protect this.
So is there anyone interested in writing a proposal for this particular change? Should add a new signature class. So I will post to the mailing list to ask if anyone wants to do that, but I'm not seeing anyone volunteering right now.
I would do an implementation, of course.
Okay. So one thing that hasn't been brought up here is ED 448. This is the end of the slides here. So do you want to talk a bit about ED 448, what the trade-offs are there?
Frankly, I've not looked into it in detail, but we also need another hash algorithm for this. I don't know what the latest specs for this. Definitely SHA 512 is not enough for this, of course. And so this goes hand in hand with a new hash algorithm also. We should definitely assign a code point for this, of course.
Yeah. Okay. So
no, we don't need a code point for this because for the elliptic curves, we use an object identifier for this, so that's easy.
but we would at least need to indicate what OID to use and put it in the draft, right? There need to be a change in the draft.
Does someone know whether there's already an OID or for 448?
There is a CFRG internet draft for 448, but I don't think it's an RFC yet.
Okay, so probably we just wait a bit.
We could, I mean, you can edit the draft to refer to an existing internet draft with the assumption that by the time it's published, it would need to be done. Does anyone here who's been following the CFRG have a sense of whether 448 will be done in? Yeah. Okay.
So these were my topics.
Okay. Thanks, Werner. No more questions on that. I wanted to just talk briefly about the PGP MIME SMIME discussion that we had on the mailing list about, there was a proposal, I think, about merging them. I want to explain why I think as a chair, this is probably not appropriate to do in this working group. So I think there's two things that PGP MIME and SMIME do. There's message formats and there are certificate formats. If we're talking about message formats, that's a separate RFC from 4880. We are chartered specifically with revising 4880. So I'd like to not get into revising 3156. If we're talking about certificate formats, I think it's pretty clear that we're not going to adopt X509 directly within Openpgp. If somebody wants to propose text, concrete text that allows you to say derive an X509 certificate from Openpgp certificate or vice versa, and that text doesn't delay the work of the working group and it's something that's straightforward to implement, I think that's fine, but I don't think that we should be, I don't want it to distract from the revisions of the crypto that we're trying to get through. So does that make sense as to why PGP MIME versus SMIME is probably out of scope for the working group at the moment? I'm not seeing any complaints about it, but I just wanted to put that out there to make sure that that's clear. If there are objections or if you want to, I mean, I'm happy to talk more if there are people who are interested in discussing other comments there.
Just a quick remark, this thing has already been implemented by PGP, and years ago, a description of what they use has been posted to the mailing list.
But we don't have text for that in the in 4880 bis, right? The description of how they do it is posted, but it's not. There's no.
No, there's nothing in it.
I thought that whole discussion was more about rechartering and not what we were doing at the moment in any case.
I'm very reluctant to try to recharter the working group right now, and we've been slower at getting just this one draft done. So if we want to talk about rechartering, that's a separate conversation, but I really think that's a distraction from the work that we are overdue on.
Right, yeah.
So, so I think that is that's the full scope of the stuff that we had on the table for today. So we're a little bit on the early side. That's good.
I just had a question for Werner. I see that you incorporated the 4 verified errata in the 4880 bis document, but there are 15 held for document update errata that don't appear to be addressed in 4880 bis. Have you looked at them?
Yes, I looked at them, but I remember that only that most of them were.
They're editorial things, but that's why we hold them for a revision of the document. Yeah, well, if you look at the errata, they're grouped. The verified ones are grouped first, and then the 15 held for document update are after that. So, Well, what you should do is use your judgment on them, the things that make sense, roll them in, things that you think need some discussion on the list, ask on the list.
Yeah, okay. So I put those which are verified features because that's.
Yeah, the verified, great.
On the other, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
So do we have any other business? Is there anything else to raise specifically for Openpgp interested folks? If not, then I will give you back 25 minutes of your life that you otherwise would have spent in the working group meeting. So use that time to write pull requests for RFC 4880 bis, right? So please do follow up on the list, and let's try to get this document turned around. Who's got the blue sheet?
Who has not signed the blue sheet? Do so, please.
I don't know where the blue sheet is. We do have just one. I think we can all fit on one if we. Great.
One comment I would try to make to the secretariat is we need to have off buttons on the desk mics. Yeah. I usually unplug them. These are.
Yeah, you're not retarded. I know you don't want to. I'm just saying.
You don't need to say that. You may say that, but you don't need to.
I know. I think once you get done, then I'm totally open to. Yeah, but once this is like working with our scholars, then
I don't.
Right now.
Judging from the energy in this room, I think we're going to push forward. We should be able to do this quickly.
Yeah.
On the other hand, if there's more energy for arguing on the mailing list,
I think, yeah, I would be totally supportive of you guys trying to close down city discussions. I mean, there's a bunch of these things where I don't think people really care that much. They're just arguing.
That's the definition of bike share, right?
Yeah. The OCV one, I think it might be.
OCV one is going to be the hardest.
Nobody else has gone there yet, as far as I can
so this is where some forcing techniques help. Instead of saying who wants to do this and who wants to do that, we say who has a strong objection to this. Say it, tell us why. But then you start getting, instead of people bringing up their little people, they only say something if they really care. They have this thing, they always have to ask both sides of the question. How do you help?
Cool.